Maddie Barrett, and you're watching Cross Encompassed. Today we're here with Mark Wilson, and we're going to talk about DNA. Not scientific DNA, but church DNA. What makes a healthy church? Let's talk about it. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing terrific. It's great to be with you, Maddie.
Yes. If you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I joined the faculty of Southern Wesleyan University 3 years ago. I'm a religion professor. Before I came here, I was a pastor in northern Wisconsin for 26 years. And so I came down here to help equip and mobilize the rising generation of pastors, having the time of my life.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a joy.
Our first question is, what trends are we seeing in church attendance?
You know, churches are going downhill. We see this all the way across the board, all the different denominations. The percentage of Americans 10 years ago who attended church was 77%, and now it's declined to like 65%. So it's an alarming trend. However, there are several churches, lots of them, that are going the opposite direction. They're doing really, really well. And so I've really done some study looking at those churches, trying to figure out what's the difference between the churches that are thriving and doing well and those that are struggling and not doing so well.
What does a healthy church look like, and what does a healthy church even mean?
Yeah, the health of a church is measured in a variety of different ways. It isn't just, like how many people show up, but it's what happens while they show up. I like to think of it like this, ICDS-W. ICDS-W. It's invite, connect, deepen, send, and then worship. And so I think that a healthy church has all of those components together. They all invite, they all connect, they all deepen or disciple, they're all sending them out, and worship is the central hub that puts it all together. An inviting church is one that reaches out to the community. It isn't just the holy huddle, just us. It's saying, what can we do to build bridges to the community?
Right.
To connect, that's the relationships that they have with each other, loving relationships. Not just relationships with each other, but maybe for the new people that are coming in. A lot of times people say, we're a really friendly church, but they're not, because they're not friendly to anybody that's outside of the church.
Right.
To deepen, that means discipleship. It's teaching people to pray and how to really dig into the Word and live by it. And then send is sending people out on a mission to their neighbors and to the nations, and maybe all the way around the world. You can touch the world from the end of it. And then W, that's worship. It's to glorify God, because God's the whole reason why you have a church. It's His church. It doesn't belong to people. And so you take all these things, you put them together, and I think that's what makes a healthy church.
I love that. I like the community aspect of what you were talking about, and I like how that goes into worship as well. You can't have good, healthy worship without community. So thank you so much for talking about that. The next question is, how should churches evaluate their success and work towards being healthy?
I think one way to do that is to measure these things. Like to say, what is our IQ, our inviting quotient? Are we doing that? Are we actually reaching out to people? Or are we just talking about it? What's the quality of our relationships? What's going on actually in the way we live our lives with each other? Are people growing in their faith? And are we sending people out on mission somewhere? Are there any mission trips happening in this church? What does the worship service seem like? What does it feel like? I think you can look at that in the whole church, in the big picture, but you can take every cell of the church. It doesn't matter how big or how small the church is. These things are still important, and every cell can be that. So for instance, within the choir, you can say, what are we doing to invite, to connect, to deepen, to send? In the youth group, what do we do to invite, connect, deepen, and send? In children's ministry, what do we do to invite, connect, deepen, send? Even the senior citizens, invite, connect, deepen, and send. If everybody has that as their mission, then the DNA should be embedded in every cell of the church.
I love that. I like how it's not only focused on the whole community, but also the little communities within that whole community that make up a church.
Yeah, for sure.
The church is imperfect, so how do we engage weak spots in churches in a responsible, practical way?
I think that as you do this evaluation about where you are, you might see that there's one area that's kind of sagging a little bit. They're all important, but there might be one that needs extra attention.
Right.
And so you think of it like maybe an orchestra that's playing. And at one part of the orchestra, of the song, maybe the viola is playing. And they take the center stage just for a little while. And then the violins come along and they do their part. So maybe it would be looking at where we are, what is needed now, and maybe for the next 6 months. So I would suggest that a church look at those things and say, which one would be the priority for us right now, like for the next 6 months or the next year, and then what can we do? What's one little thing we can do in the other ones, just to make sure that we're keeping those going too.
Right. You talked about thinking 6 months to a year ahead within those. Do you think it's more important to look ahead or to look kind of where you're at now and then kind of focus on ahead?
I think you start with the end in mind. Where you're going, where you're going to go, and then you plan and you make your activities and stuff go towards that. So you have to say, what am I doing now to reach that? But we always have to keep that in mind.
Yes, okay, that makes perfect sense. Are there more important pieces of church health than others?
Well, they're all important, but I would say the worship, is the most important because it's the one that wraps them all up together. The Bible says, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it. It isn't a human endeavor, that it's all about God. It's not about us. So with worship as the centerpiece, that's the most important. But then the other ones, they are really important too. They have to be in harmony together, like a quartet. They need to play together, working off of each other. It isn't like one or another. They all need to be in harmony together.
Right. I really like how you talked about harmony. I think that is super important in a church because, you can't do one thing without the other. Teamwork is together, and so is church, and that's how God created it all to be, right?
It sure is. That's right.
Well, now we have a better idea of what makes a healthy church. Thanks for tuning in to the Cross Encompassed. I'm your host, Maddie Barrett, and this is Mark Wilson, and thank you guys so much for watching.